Welcome to the Data Playbook podcast. It's a podcast for data leaders to build a playbook on how to get more value from data. I'm Kris Peeters. I'm the CEO of Data Minded. And today I am joined with one of the speakers at the conference we're at, actually. We're at the POA Summit. It's the Data Product Oriented Architecture Summit right here in Stuttgart. And one of the speakers today who will talk about data domains is Jan-Mark Pleijsant from ABN AMRO. Jan-Mark, thank you very much for joining this podcast with us. So you will be speaking later today or tomorrow? Tomorrow, all right. Maybe can you start by introducing yourself? Who are you? Where do you work? And what's your role at the organization?
Yeah, sure. So my role in the organization is I'm a senior data strategy and governance advisor. That means I'm working in the data governance team of the central data office in ABN AMRO Bank, where we essentially design the data governance, what is needed for the entire bank, and what kind of data management capabilities do we need. I'm working there in ABN AMRO for more than 20 years already, so it's never a dull moment.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot in the bank in that sense, also in the area of data management.
Yeah. But then maybe let's start with the question on why does a bank like ABN AMRO need data governance in the first place?
Yeah, good question. I think data. So let's bring back to first data. So we see a lot of companies recognize the value of data, and many companies can use that data for doing analytics or how to improve the customer services, for instance. That's also what we do and what we want to do with data. But as a bank, we are also highly regulated. Mm. Of course, there was the credit crisis. Maybe some of the listeners will recognize that. But the regulators started to build up a lot of regulations, a lot of regulatory pressure to especially ensure that data is in order. Yeah. And that there's enough data to be able to understand where are the risks, the credit risks, for instance, in everything what the bank is doing. And that means you have to manage a lot of data, but the data also needs to be trustworthy. Because if you report something, okay, that's fine, but how do you know that is the right data that you report so that you get the right insights? So there's a lot of regulatory topics there, and which essentially for me all makes sense, but it is typically what non-regulated companies might not have and might consider only maybe at a later stage. So banks have to do that. And that's why you see in a lot of banks also a strong data governance team to ensure, okay, what should we do and how should we do it, etc.
And in your talk, you're going to talk about the concept of federated data governance. So can you explain to the audience who's not aware of what it means? My first reaction would be, well, if you're a bank and you have a lot of regulatory compliance, you don't want to federate your governance. You want to you want to keep it very centrally and almost like a dictatorship, right? So why do you go for federated data governance if you have all these regulatory compliance?
We have considered that, by the way, to have more of a dictatorship.
That was plan
personally,
one.
I'm not against that, but no. So we said, okay, what we don't want, or it also needs to scale. So if you have one department that does everything, because that would almost mean dictatorship, then you will end up with the bottlenecks, etc. So what we decided is we have one strong oversight department. That is then the central data office, which dictates the rules. So we have the policies and the standards and the guidelines dictated by us. But the actual work of doing data management is done by what we call data domains.
Okay.
And these data domains we organized in a specific way. Maybe we can talk about that later on, but in a specific way. But for instance, one of them is the customer data domain. And they do the work on data management, because then you can have the skilled people who know everything about that kind of data, but also what is relevant for that, also regulations wise, what is essential to pay attention to and to ensure. So it is, in that sense, we work together as a central team, but also with these, let's say, federated data domains, and they have some kind of autonomy to decide what is best for their domain. Also to make some choices on what kind of data products, for instance, they want to have, but all within the boundaries set by us. So in that sense, it's also a bit of a mix model.
And so before the recording, you told me, like, before you had data domains, you had more than 300 different data owners. Yeah. And that was one of the trigger points to create data domains, right? Like, why was it difficult to have 300 data owners, and how is data domains helping you with that?
So we started relatively long time ago in starting up data management and data governance. So at that time, it was also not per se very crystal clear. Nobody talked about data domains at that time. And so it was, okay, we need ownership of data. Okay, let's start. So we assigned the most important data to some data owners. And there we, for instance, talking about customer data. So who is the most logical person then to be owner of customer data? Somebody who feels accountable for customers. Yeah. So somebody from the business who feels, okay, I know my customer, and hey, maybe you can then also become the owner of your data, because the only reason you know your customer is because you have data about it, in the simple way.
Yeah, it's true.
And so, but that grew because we have quite a lot of data, and over time it ended up indeed in the 300 plus area. The difficulty with that is that they don't only need to be owner, but being an owner means you have to ensure that the data quality is good. Yeah. You have to ensure that you know exactly what that data means. So you have to come with definitions, with data models. We want to know, okay, there's data, but that data is being used in a report that is going to either the regulator or to the executive board or whoever needs that data. And they also want to know where's that data coming from, etc. That's what we call data lineage. So you have to do quite a lot of things for which you're accountable if you are an owner. And that is more difficult if you have a lot of owners, and especially owners that are maybe not dedicated to doing data management. So over time we found out, okay, but it is better if you have some more dedicated professionals in that sense, who understand data very well, who also understand the business, but also understand the data very well. And then it is also much more easy to organize it, also from the oversight perspective. So the alignment with the central data office is more easy if you have not that many owners than if you have 300 owners. So that's why we decided, as part of that federated data governance model, to choose data domains. And we now have 15 data domains. And that is much more easy to have the oversight on and to steer in the right direction. If there are changes, much more easy to bring it to 15 teams than to 300 plus teams.
That makes a lot of sense. And so let's take the customer data domain as an example. Can you share with us, what does a day in the life look like of someone working in the customer data domain?
Yeah. So first of all, there are various roles in a data domain. So we have the data domain owner, who's essentially the manager, essentially aligning with other domains, because the data is never in isolation, but customer data, you want, of course, to combine that with data about the credits, the loans that we provide, etc. So they need to align on how things relate and what are the priorities in these things. That's typically where a data domain owner, for instance, comes in. An important role is a data steward that we have, and they need to understand the data, need to understand the business, and they work on, for instance, do we have definitions for the data? So they work on that, or data quality checks. Hey, there are requirements coming in from consumers who need that data. Okay, what are these requirements? Can we build data quality checks for that, etc. And there are also people that are more on the technical side that actually can build data products, for instance, more than on the technical side. They also participate in these data domains. So the entire picture of everything you can do with data management that is focused in that data domain.
Yeah. And so when we look at other organizations, how they organize their data domains, very often they start with, well, a business unit is a data domain. It's very easy. We have the sales data domain, we have the customer support domain, we have the manufacturing domain. Is that also how you approach it?
Yeah, and not exactly. So because originally we had that more or less, not per se calling it data domains, but we had these business unit oriented structure where the data owners worked for a business unit. And we had some representatives for a data domain or data owners focused on, or per business unit. But problem is, again, example of customer data. At that time, we had a business unit retail banking, business unit private banking, business unit commercial banking, business unit corporate banking. All had to do with customer data.
Of course.
So it is then very scattered, the ownership, but also how you approach that kind of data. So we decided, okay, that's not the best way to organize it per business unit. So let's look at more the nature of the data, because we were already a little bit experimenting with, okay, we see a lot of customer data with many data owners. Okay, we can call this. So we already started labeling that with, oh, this is customer data.
Yeah.
And so we had quite a lot of these labels, but we said, okay, but these labels, that could be the starting point for defining our data domain. So they're much more about the nature of the data. So customer data, loan data, payments data, savings data, then that it is, or employee data, then that it is per se per business unit. But of course, we have one of the data domains is employee and organization, as we call it, internal organization, meaning that.
Yeah.
Of course, you can tie that quite nicely with HR.
Yes.
So it is not per se that it is completely not business unit aligned, but it is not the purpose in itself. And we also see that in that employee and organization domain is also more data than formally is owned by HR. There's also
like, for example,
the facility management, so the buildings that we have, the workplace management. It's not
HR data.
It's not HR itself, but it's much more facility management data, which is a different department. But we assigned that to the employee and organization domain because there are a lot of interactions in that data is needed. So we combined the things that need to be combined. For example, an employee wants to book a meeting room.
Yeah.
So already we saw in the data a lot of connections there. Yeah. And if things, we have one of these principles that we also applied for setting up data domains. And quite often it is, if data is tied together, it needs to be changed together, it needs to be close together, or it originates together, then it keep it together. And this is one of the thoughts of, hey, does it make sense? So we made some proposals there. And it was also recognized by the people then we were involved. Even people from HR recognized, okay, this is, we understand that, because on the IT level, we already work together.
Yeah, it's a logical tight coupling that happens in the real life. So that's why you also do that coupling in the, let's say, in the design of the data domains.
Yeah.
And I guess that makes a lot of sense. Maybe the challenges that you might face, I'm curious, is that let's take the customer domain, for example. I understand like both wealth and retail banking and maybe business banking, they all have the notion of a customer. So instead of reinventing the wheel 5 times, let's define a data domain customer.
Yeah.
But then are you not risking in ending up in endless discussions about, well, for a retail customer or for the retail domain, a customer might be an individual. For a wealth customer, it might be a family. For a business banking, it might be, well, a business, right? So how do you get to agree to align those business units on what is a customer?
But that's exactly that. We say, what is a customer? That is determined by the customer data domain. They can decide what they want to consider a customer. And of course, they align with every business unit, but it is fact that every business unit considers something else as a customer.
Yes.
And so that's why we say, but data domain, you harmonize things, you bring things together. But you also determine what then the term customer means. And it can be that we say, okay, but we have maybe for retail banking a different kind of customer than for private banking, but make that explicit.
Yes.
Because if things are different, then make it clear that it is different. If things should be the same, make sure that it also is recognized as the same. But be explicit, and that doesn't mean we are not changing the business itself with this, but we make it more easy to bring it to these data domains that work bank-wide, and that can say, okay, but if we bring this data further, so we bring that data, we combine that data in what we also call data products, and these data products should be such that it's very easy to consume, and that is the responsibility of these data domains. But they need to understand their business and the business units, and help them to come up with the proper structuring and the proper definitions also of what we...
But I think it's a subtle but important thing you say there, because for you it might be obvious, but we've seen plenty of companies who argue endlessly, like train companies argue what a train is, or airline companies argue what a flight is, or like, and there I really like your approach. Well, we have one customer data domain and they decide what a customer is, but each business unit, if they have a different definition about it or a slight nuance or an addition, that's fine. Yeah. But make it explicit. Make it so that it's not confusing. It's very
That's
powerful.
also why we are, in that sense, the Federated Data Governance and not dictatorship governance. That was an alternative to consider, but
no, I
said
agree.
Maybe let's not do that.
Well, I think many companies start with the data governance dictatorship. I would call it the data governance police, like just telling people what to do and what not to do. Yeah. But then there's very hard to get buy-in of those kind of governance projects, and they usually fail, right? Yeah. So in here, I understand it's much more about enablement and but
we
then
do some controls, of course,
in a regulated environment.
But it is more, So, but it is.
What kind of controls?
So we have, of course, the overarching policy and standards, and essentially we don't control too much. We don't try to overdo it, but it is stepping up step by step. So we also want to let them learn and explore a bit. But at some point in time, it is okay. But now this is really too far. You're really deviating from what the idea was. So at this moment in time, we don't have too much controls to really say this is wrong or something like that, but we do measure where are they now in the maturity, for instance. So that's also a bit on the self-assessment, for instance. Where do you think you are, or what do you think the other domains are that you work with? So a bit of that qualitative assessments. That is what we do right now. And gradually there will be more controls, but not for the sake of having controls, but for the sake of we want to ensure that the right things are being done. But there's some freedom to do that.
I also love the idea of measuring the maturity of a domain, because nobody gets it first time right? It would put the barrier way too high to even get started. So, and the important thing is just start doing things and start building. And it's okay if you're low maturity in the beginning, right? As long as it's clear how to grow in maturity and what to aspire to, right?
And there I always tell them, when we launched the data domain, so we started 2 years ago with, okay, now we want to have these data domains. And I was there with all the launch days of each data domain to also present, okay, these are the data domains, this is what we expect, this is how we perceive the data products, etc. But it was also, then there I also used the analogy of essentially as a data domain, you are a supermarket. You're like a supermarket. And you have providers. So like the big companies providing the farmers or whatever. They provide essentially the raw materials or the
goods.
The goods. And you have consumers. And there I also use quite often the analogy of a salad. So you can have a consumer going to the supermarket who wants to have a tuna salad.
Yeah.
And then they buy at the shop, and that is essentially how we started. They go to the supermarket and they buy the lettuce and they buy the tuna and they buy the dressing, and they buy whatever you want, and some eggs. And they buy that, they go to the kitchen, they chop it up, do some things, they integrate it, and then they serve it and they eat it. And that works, but it's quite a lot of work, especially if you want to have these salads quite often, and there are a lot of consumers who have to do that. They all have to go to the kitchen, chop it up, take some time. You can also, so as a supermarket, you can think, okay, but how can we help our consumers? How can we do a better job there and make it easier for them to consume and get value out of the data? And that is where supermarkets started to invent the prepackaged salads. So you can also offer in the supermarket a salad ready to consume. You open it up, you open the lid, and you can directly eat. And if you don't like tomatoes, for instance, you can take out the tomatoes if you don't want that. But for the rest, everything is ready to go, and that saves a lot of time for the consumers. But maybe you want more than only the tuna salad. Maybe you also want a Caesar salad or whatever. They all need lettuce, so some of the same ingredients, but each of these salads also needs some other ingredients. And the supermarket, the data domain, can provide that in their data product, in their data products. So that is an analogy that I always like to use, but that also gives a bit of the freedom that I expect from data domains, that they think of what is good for my consumer. What do my consumers need? And how can I help them with creating products, data products, so that they can do the right thing?
And is it for you that the data consumers, do you push them as much as possible to go for the prepackaged salads? Or do you say, no, as a data consumer, you can take the raw ingredients, do whatever you want, and you can take the pre-prepped salad? Or do you push them in a direction there?
Not per se, because for me it is fine if there are consumers who prefer to have the raw ingredients, do your thing. But then you have to be aware that you have to take some time in your own kitchen to prepare that and integrate that. And there might be a risk. So it is a bit that I know some of the data domain owners also said, if I have my data products ready then I demand my consumers to use it via these data products and not doing the raw ingredient, because then I'm not in control of how they interpret that data and do the integration. So I prefer that they use the data products directly. But essentially, I think that is for the data domains themselves to do. Although I know a lot of people make the assumption or that we enforce them to use data products and that we forbid to go to the raw ingredients, but essentially that's not true. But so preferably I leave that to the data domains themselves to find out what is best. But also there it is what is best for my consumers. Yeah. And there's, I think, the freedom that we can give also these data domains.
Maybe to come back to the design of the data domains, you don't do it per business unit, but the benefit of doing it per business unit is very clear what your domains are, right? So you just take a day, you write down the business unit, done. You decided to go the other way and you have very good reasons for that, but then how do you decide to choose which data domains you have?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That's also part of the presentation that I give. Yeah. But maybe also one more reason to add why we don't want to organize it purely per business unit, because business units tend to change.
Oh yeah.
And because I talked about, we had retail banking, private banking, commercial banking, corporate banking, but that was a few years ago. Right now we have personal and business banking, wealth management, and corporate banking.
It's a big reorg.
That is some shifting at least. And
absolutely,
what you don't want is that your data domains have to shift with every reorganization. Because why would you? Client data of customer data remains customer data, regardless of reorganization. So we also look for stability. So that is also one of the principles, essentially, one of the foundational principles that we apply for. You should choose something that is stable over time. And if you take that as a starting point, then you already get to, okay, but then it cannot be the business units per se.
Yeah.
You need something else. So what is then that other dimension? Yeah. And that is where we said, essentially, it is something like the nature of the data. So customer data is different than loan data. Because it's about different things. And so it is also about what are the things that we have data about. So we have customers, we have data about customers. Customer itself is not data, it's a thing. It's like you and me, we are human beings, or it's an organization that can be a customer. A loan is a different thing.
Yeah.
And we have data about loans. We have data about the collateral, the real estate that is pledged security for loans. We have employees. These are things. And we have we have our applications, our IT systems. These are things about which you have data and which you need data. And so that is always a good thing, or a good starting point of what do you have in the organization that you always talk about? What are the things that you want data about? And that is relatively at a conceptual level. You can say in some cases you can call that a subject area model. So if you describe the bank or any other organization very high level, so you get 10 terms to describe your company, what terms would you use?
That's a good question.
And essentially that could be a very good starting point of, so you have data about these things, and might be that you organize your data domains around these things.
And I guess these data domains, they crystallize over time. It's not day one that they are clear. How long did it take you to go to, let's say, a V1 of the data domains you have?
Yeah, it was a few months. But we had already that we were thinking this labeling.
Yeah, exactly.
So there was already some thinking from 5 years ago. that was a starting point. But then we said, okay, but we have 35 of these labels. That's too much. To turn that into data domains, it doesn't make sense. So you need to combine things.
Yeah.
And what do you combine? Things that are really tied together. Let's see if we can combine that. For instance, the employee and the internal organization structure, or the employee and the facility management structures, or the loans and the collateral about these loans. Let's see if we can combine these things. Also doing that with the stakeholders, stakeholder alignment. Hey, what do you think? Does it make sense? Because we have some of the principles of, hey, if things change together, keep it together. These kind of things. Okay, let's see if we can analyze that. And then we came with 20 domains. Was already squeezed down, but then we had luckily executive board, expo involvement early. Very, very important, by the way.
Why?
You need that senior management buy-in, but really, because we always had their buy-in, they always said, yeah, it's good what you're doing. But we wanted to make it personal, then personally responsible or accountable.
What do you mean by that?
If you want, so data, doing some a data governance implementation like this. Mm-hmm. Designing what you need is essentially not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is you want to do a change in the organization. You want to do a cultural change in the organization. And then you have 20,000 people you need to convince. And believe me, everybody has its own opinion why you are wrong. And
especially in the Netherlands, right?
Maybe especially in the Netherlands. I hear that from some people that we are maybe very famous for that. So everybody has an opinion. And I think there it is essential that you have really the top-down support of, guys, shut up, do it. Yeah, and if there are problems, bring it to me, and I will deal with it.
But we cannot keep debating forever. We need to move forward.
Exactly. If you want to go fast, you need that. But that's also what I saw, that it can happen in a relatively short time. And this is also, and of course we also work together with a consulting firm that also helps, because external parties might also help in convincing the internal organization of, hey, maybe it's a good idea. It's not that those few people that we know, they decided that, but it is also supported from, let's say, best practices from outside.
Yeah,
that's also important. Maybe that's a Dutch thing, I don't know, but it is important to get people along in how can you convince and take them along. And so they, and it's also a good sanity check, because we can think of something, but who says we know best?
Yeah, they've seen 10 other implementations and they can bring the best practices as well.
Yeah. And so we had some nice interaction also with them, and also made some different choices than what they presented, because we also wanted to make it fit for us. But we work together with them. That also gives support. So I think that's also important to have some backup maybe, or some professional advice from outside. I think in these big changes that is always useful and appreciated. But essentially it was done in a few months' time that we said, okay, we start doing this, it's going to happen. So essentially it started in, early 2023. And in, now by August it was, okay, but this is it.
Still, for a large bank, that's very fast.
For us, it is quite fast indeed.
For any bank, I think.
Yeah, and then the implementation, then really the rollout of, now we really bring it further. But also that was relatively smooth. And they now start up, so they all these domains work, and they build it up. And of course they have questions. Of course they have challenges for themselves. But that's also fine. And I think always together we learn, because they also bring in things we did not think about.
Of course.
And then we think, okay, but maybe we should do it like this. And then we add some guidance, etc. And we work together on how to improve things.
Can you give an example at the top of your head of something that you didn't think of when you launched the program, but then based on feedback you got from the field that you revisited?
No, I think we considered a lot of things, but it is sometimes more in the details. And sometimes it is also about the interpretation of a data product, for instance. Maybe also what we discussed earlier about, okay, we introduce now these data products, and so that's one of your biggest challenges, make these data products. But then, but can we still use that raw data or not? And that is then what sometimes I think, that's not allowed. Yeah, but it is allowed. And okay, let's make that more clear. How will that work, etc. But also one of the things that we later on found out, also in alignment with architecture, is okay, maybe it is useful to spend more time on things like a conceptual data model. A thin layer that is essentially helping to connect the dots. How do these domains connect to each other? Because you can have the domain with the customer data, and the data product with the loan data. And the loan data is, of course, for a customer, so that needs to connect to each other.
There needs to be a link.
Yeah. So, but to make sure that we choose the right links, that is also where we found out, okay, maybe we should add that kind of layers to make that more explicit, that we can work on that, on the interoperability between the domains, between these data products, and make that more explicit and drive that further. So that was one of the things that later on was, okay, maybe we should spend a little bit more time on these things.
Interesting. You mentioned the word data product a few times. So how are data products linked to domains, and what is a data product in the ABN AMRO world?
So we say the data products are built by the data domains. So we expect data domains to make these data products available. That's like the analogy of the pre-packaged salad. So originally, so some five years ago, we only worked with what we call data sets. And the raw ingredients is what we called in golden data sets, because they came from the golden sources, as is. And that was difficult to, that was essentially the raw ingredients, but with all kind of flavors.
So it's a copy-paste from the operational systems, or?
More or less. But not with the complexity of the databases, but already more business meaningful, business understandable. But essentially it was more or less a copy from those applications. But for consumers, that is not always easy to use. They want to have, because customer data, we have various applications for that in various countries. And they all use different terminologies, different structures, etc. So you wanted to harmonize that. So that's why we introduced at some point in time what we call the integrated data set. So it's another data set that integrates and harmonizes data from various sources. And when we started the Federated Data Governance model, we said, okay, essentially these integrated data sets, bit difficult term, a bit technology-oriented term, maybe even. Let's call that data products, because with data mesh, for instance, data products is hype. I don't want to say that, but it is a very popular term.
Absolutely.
And there was a nice article from McKinsey at some point in time of companies that treat data as a product. And then something very beneficial, improve consumption by 90% or faster, or something like that. So it is treat data as a product. That sounds something like, okay, you can understand it, you can explain that.
It resonates with business people.
Exactly, right? More than integrated data set, which sounds a little bit more
very technical.
So we said that, and then also the data domains, it's only a data product if the data domains has decided this is the data product I'm going to build. So only data products can do that, because there were normal business units who said, oh, I want to build a data product. And said, no, that's why we have data domains. Please keep it there and work together with them, provide your requirements to them, and let them do that. But essentially it is then a set of data that can have multiple technical implementations, can consist of multiple tables, if you like. Can be one table, can be multiple tables, but it can also have an API, it can have a lot of different technical interactions or technical interfaces. Business-wise, it's always the same thing. So it has what we call the data elements, and they are defined with a crystal clear business definition. It has data quality scores, it has all these kind of things, but it can have multiple technical ways of being shared with the consumer.
And do you also, from the data mesh book, they talk about source-aligned data products, consumer-aligned aggregate data products. Is it also a concept that you've adopted? Do you differentiate between those kinds of data products, or how do you deal with it?
Partly. So the source-aligned data products is what we call the golden data sets. That is essentially what is close to the application where it's coming from the source. So we don't use the term data product for that. Maybe in the future we will consider that, but we call that golden data sets, and the organizations used to that. And for the rest, we say, okay, we just have data products. So everything that is integrated or harmonized or whatever you have done with that, that is then a data product. Maybe at some point in time we say we further differentiate that in different flavors if there's a need to. Right now, that would be one step too far, I think, to do that. But the data products are the very useful building blocks in that sense for building quickly a dashboard or a report or these kind of things.
And so we see other companies, before they adopt data products, they typically have gone through a phase of building centralized data warehouses, right? And I wonder, is that true as well at ABN AMRO? Do you still have a central data warehouse? And are data products replacing the data warehouse, or is it on top of what is the link with data warehousing?
For sure we had a central data warehouse, so a very big one, coming with this, probably the issues that everybody is encountering. It became slow to make changes, so the flexibility that we sometimes need, that was not the best way of doing it this way. And there we also see that organizing data management and data around these data domains that help also in this way. So we said every data domain has, let's say, its own data warehouse. A domain data store, we call it, but you can consider it something like a data warehouse. And they can determine how that is organized, how that is modeled, and that's how they can build these data products. So it is the application that helps to build data products on top of that. So in that sense, it's also, I think, federated, that there's that flexibility in. It is not one bank-wide monolithic thing that is very difficult to keep up to date and to maintain, but much more flexible and agile, I think, to organize it around these data domains. And they can use the, so maybe also there, one example is we have, also always talk about this customer domain. But for instance, we also have a domain that is much more what we call finance risk, but that is much more tailored to providing the regulatory reports, for instance. Of course, they need customer data for that, and they need loan data from the credits domain. But they can also bring that data in their own data store. And they can even label that differently. They can use different terminology because they are more closely aligned to the language of the regulator, which makes sense from their perspective.
Absolutely.
So in that sense, you can argue that the data is also provided over these various data stores, but managed within the data domain. There's always one owner of the data, by the way. So if, for instance, that finance and risk domain uses customer data, that doesn't make them the owner of the data, because that is still with that customer domain.
So it can be stored in finance and risk, but it's still owned by the customer domain.
Yeah. Okay. And preferably, we don't want to have these copies.
No.
Preferably want to have views. That's also where we are looking for, hey, can we establish that more and more? It's also more on the architecture side that it is being done. But where it is necessary, you can still do that. But that gives also some flexibility in bringing the data to the report. So it is not that if the customer domain has decided this is a customer and this is how it must be structured, that doesn't mean it can't be structured in a slightly different way or named slightly different by a domain for which their consumers really have a need for that.
That's the autonomy that you give each domain.
Exactly, exactly. As long as everything is understood, okay, where's it coming from? It's also where data lineage is important from. So where's it coming from? You know who's the owner, etc.
Yeah. If you zoom out a bit, as you said, data has been important for ABN AMRO probably since the beginning, but you started the data domain journey 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. You've already accomplished a lot in 2 years. Usually with banks, it doesn't go as fast. So if I would ask you to look 2 years in the future and we sit here again, what do you hope you can tell? What do you hope? What are you doing then that you're not doing yet?
Now, in 2 years' time, I really hope that we are so far that everything that the most important reports and dashboards, for instance, for the regulator, but also for decision making by the executive board or senior management, that we really can say that data is provided via the data products from these data domains. Because that is starting up. Of course, not all data products are implemented yet, or the data products don't contain all data yet. But there's the priority for everything that is important. Start there and do ensure that that data can be made available also via this route. Yeah. And in 2 years' time, I really hope that we are that far that we can say, at least for that what is really essential, that we have it in that way, because it streamlines the data flows. It makes it much more you get quicker access to the things with governance by design. Yeah. And that is, I think, also one of the powers of doing it this way. With these data products, you can really have governance by design. And so that's what I hope that we can achieve in 2 years' time.
Create some kind of snowball effect that the first data product you can build on top of, and it becomes bigger and bigger until indeed at some point you come at like this turning point where your most important assets or reports or use cases are built on top of those data products.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you, it's a very hypothetical question, of course, but what do you see as the key factors for success to actually make that happen? And what do you see as the biggest risks why it would not happen?
The key success is still that senior management buy-in. Yeah. That they also say, yes, this is important, please do, and continue, and don't deviate from that, continue. Of course, from our side also, hey, do they run into issues and how can we help them to make it more easy? But also a bit of discipline. So quite often you see people have the intention to work on that target, but then it is, but there's now a priority.
It's always another priority.
And sorry, I don't have time for that. And this is the story over and over, but I think we're not the only ones in that. It's human, but so then, okay, we have to do it first in this way because, let's say tomorrow or next week we have to deliver something.
Yeah.
And that takes time, and but we have that all the time. So also a bit of discipline, but that's also why I think it's important for senior management that they also understand, okay, we can ask for this priority, but maybe let's reconsider, can't we shift that a little bit and maybe say, build that foundation, because that is for the future more stable.
No, I love the advice, because a lot of these programs start with the best intentions and with good architecture and good technology solutions, but to make it sustainable over the long term, indeed, that's what I've seen as well. You need to be very disciplined in your domains to actually step by step deliver those data products, work on data quality, work on your SLAs. Right? And you can only get that, exactly as you said, right? I'm just paraphrasing what you said. You can only get there if you have senior management buy-in.
Yeah.
Else there's always another priority.
Exactly.
Okay, I'd like to wrap up the interview with a question I ask each guest. And the question is, what do you know now about data that you didn't know when you started, or maybe that you didn't know 5 years ago before you started this data domain journey?
Yeah, a nice question. For me, it goes a long way back. So, but thinking about that, what I always encounter and what always still surprises me maybe also, is that data is quite often seen as something from IT, where I believe IT helps with it, it supports it and facilitates it, but data should be from the business itself. So looking at, I always like to talk about customers and customer data. So we say we know our customers, we serve our customers. But the only reason we know our customers, or most of the customers, is because we have data about them. So in that sense, data is really tied to whatever we do. Especially maybe in a bank, we don't have too many real-life things. Oh. We don't build cars. Here in Stuttgart, there are a lot of car manufacturers. They make something tangible. They can say, this is a car, you can touch it. Everything we do, a loan, a transaction, a payment, a savings, it's all data. And so essentially that's the only thing we have. But that is primarily how we do business. Yeah. If there was no data, we are out of business. There's nothing for us to do anymore. So everything, data is the entire business, I would almost say. And still quite often it is perceived as data, that's something difficult, that's IT. Yeah. Please fix it. It is business who should fix it with the support of IT. And that's always what I try to keep in mind and also try to bring forward to our stakeholders.
I love the insight, because data is stored in IT systems. Yes. But indeed, as you say, what is a bank without data? It's an empty shell, right? Yeah. So it is in the first place a business matter, supported by IT technologies and what have you. But it is a business topic. Yeah. It sounds obvious when you say it, but I didn't look at it that way. Yeah. All right. Jan-Mark, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I wish you all the best with your talk here at the conference. Thanks. Thanks for having me here. I'd like to join this. Let's do it again 2 years from now. Let's do that. Thank you very much.